For centuries, Japan and Europe imagined the perfect warrior. On one side, the Japanese bushi in yoroi, bow in hand. On the other, the European knight in steel, lance couched. Today we're not playing the who would win game. We're doing something more useful, looking at how they fought, with what equipment, what logistics kept them moving, and which societies shaped them. Strip away the myth, and what's left is even more interesting. The direct comparison of samurai versus knight only makes sense if we consider the era, terrain, and mission. A knight from 1470 is not the same as one from 1200, and the same is true for the samurai. So we'll examine solid and verifiable points, and at the end, we'll propose reasonable scenarios to view the comparison without fantasies. To truly understand how they fought, let's start with the first thing you see on a warrior: what they wear to survive. In Japan, classic armor, oyoroi and later domaru, combines plates of iron or lacquered leather, joined by silk cords. It is modular, flexible, and adapted to horseback riding and the use of the yumi, the Japanese longbow. Over time, more compact and mixed solutions appear, tatami gusoku, wider plate pieces in the later period, but the basic idea is to protect without hindering range of motion or movement. In Europe, between the 14th and 15th centuries, the evolution led to the full plate armor, articulated steel covering almost the entire body, designed to deflect and absorb blows. A good armor allows one to run, ride, fight hand to hand, and even get up from the ground. Underneath, a gambeson and often chainmail in flexible areas. It's an engineering of impact. Against cavalry lances, crossbow bolts, and pole axes, continuous steel makes all the difference. Against cuts and arrows at mid-range, late European plate armor generally offers better protection. Japanese lamellar armor, lighter and segmented, excels in mobility, especially for archery and mounted maneuvers in complex terrain. Let's now look at the main weapons. In Japan, the classic tripod in open terrain consists of yumi, bao, yari, straight spear, and naginata, curved halberd. The katana is excellent as a secondary weapon for cutting or thrusting at close range, but in battle, the spear dominates. In Europe, heavy cavalry charges with cavalry lances. On foot, halberds, pikes, and battle axes. One-handed weapons include longswords or swordsmen. In sieges and duels in armor, thrusting and the warhammer are used to find gaps in the armor. At range, longbows and crossbows are used. A myth to keep in mind: the katana cuts through plate steel, or European armor makes you clumsy. These are cliches. The reality: each system optimizes for its tactical environment and primary threats. Let's now see how these pieces move together on the field. In Japan, the aristocratic origins of the bushi revolve around mounted archery and martial displays. But in the Kamakura Muromachi Sengoku periods, warfare became more mass-based. Ashigaru, infantry with yari, swords, establish holding lines, while mounted units exploit flanks, and teppo, armored infantry, unleash volleys, sometimes under hourglass commands. Coordination is enhanced by banner signals and drums. In Europe, heavy cavalry is decisive when the terrain allows. But infantry companies with pikes and halberds, and later pike and arquebus or musket formations, mark a transition toward combined arms. Close-form discipline and standardized command structures grew with mercenary companies and princely armies. The terrain dictates the outcome. Rice paddies, wooded hills, and narrow passes in Japan favor fragmented combat and ambushes. The plains and open fields of Europe allow for compact formations and longer charges. Maneuvers sound great, until hunger, mud, and long distances set in. Without bread and horseshoes, no tactic can hold up. Logistics wins campaigns. In Japan, smaller, more resilient horses predominate, ideal for uneven terrain. Their top speed and heavy impact capacity are not that of a European destrier, but agility and autonomy in mountains and soft ground are real advantages. In Europe, large war horses, along with sturdy horseshoes and bridles, support heavy loads and the transport of very heavy harnesses. This requires fodder, iron, open fields, and relatively passable roads. To feed the Japanese armies of the Sengoku period, they combined local support, confiscation or tribute, castle supply depots, and mobility with baggage trains that were less bulky than those used by many European armies. They relied on the surrounding environment and nearby lordly networks. In Europe, the large armies of the late Middle Ages and Renaissance moved wagons, kitchens, ammunition, spare pikes, and relied on supply contracts, tolls, and regulated plunder. Maintaining long pikes, crossbows, ropes, bolts, horseshoes, and gunpowder required extensive logistical chains. In terms of sieges and fortifications, Japan featured Yamajiro mountain castles and, later, large Himeji-type fortresses integrated into regional networks. Palisade walls, earthworks, and tiered layouts facilitated layered defense and control of valleys. In Europe, we transitioned from the Romanesque castle to the concentric castle and, with gunpowder, the beginnings of low-lying fortifications. Protracted sieges required artillery, mines, countermines, and substantial funds. In practice, honor was organized, who recruited troops, how signals were sent, and what punishments prevented the line from breaking. The bushi is part of a military administrative elite that, over time, monopolizes the use of weapons. Their ethics, Bushido as we understand it today, were codified and romanticized, especially during the Edo period, when warfare nearly ceased. Before then, clan pragmatism, loyalty to the daimyo, and the survival of lineage prevailed. The European knight, on the other hand, emerged from a feudal system of privileges, vassalage, and knighthood as status. Courtesy and literary chivalry idealized a practice that was often brutal. Eventually, princes came to prefer paid and disciplined troops to the pride of lineage. For recruitment and discipline, Japan relied on coalitions of daimyo with groups of bushi and masses of ashigaru, using signals, banners, and severe punishments. In Europe, noble retinues, urban militias, and mercenaries, such as the Swiss companies and Landsknechts. The manuals and ordinances impose rules of fire and movement. Both regions share an uncomfortable truth. War is expensive. Maintaining horses, harnesses, ammunition, and salaries requires rents, taxes, spoils, and debt. Logistical efficiency is more important than any heroic duel. Okay, let's move from the concept to the terrain. Let's look at these differences in clear scenes that everyone can imagine. Imagine damp hills, narrow paths, and rice paddies that slow the horses down. Here, the samurai is at his best. He arrives swiftly, fires from horseback, harasses, and disappears. The European knight, with chainmail, shield, and lance, needs space to mount a charge. If he manages to draw the Japanese out into open ground and gather momentum, he can break through. But in the green labyrinth, speed is cut short, flanks multiply, and the mounted archer wears down enemies without exposing himself. Who has the advantage? The one who sets the pace. In the forest and the rice paddies, that pace usually belongs to the samurai. Now the playing field changes, dry ground, a long horizon, and time to form up. On the Japanese side, lines of yari and archers alternate volleys. On the European side, blocks of pikes and halberds, crossbows or longbows, and cavalry in plate armor await the order. If Europe closes in a tight square and maintains cohesion, its wall of steel absorbs arrows and cuts off the frontal assault. If Japan synchronizes volleys, moves its flanks, and forces the blocks to turn, the formation suffers, and the Japanese lance finds gaps. And if we remove the noise of units and reduce it to a minimum, a simple question remains. One-on-one, how does each system prevail? For the one-on-one to be fair, let's make this clear. Combat on foot, without horses or projectiles, on firm, dry ground. The knight wears plate armor and carries a halberd. He also has a sword and a dagger. The samurai wears lighter armor, carries a long lance, and a katana at his belt. The samurai's plan is simple. Let the fight unfold at the point of his spear. He touches, steps back, touches again. He feints at the face, jabs at the thigh, moves. He wants to prevent the knight from ever reaching him. The knight's plan is equally simple: to move the spear's point away and close the distance. He deflects the spear with his halberd, takes a step, repositions his hands. If he strings together 2 or 3 small steps like this, the long distance is over. When the weapons finally touch, everything changes. The knight hooks the spear with the point of his halberd and pushes to close the gap. The samurai tries to break free, twist his body, and draw his katana. But at close range, the knight's armor does its job. The cuts make contact. They sound, but they don't penetrate. The knight then grips his sword in the middle to better guide the point and looks for openings, under the arm, in the groin, in the helmet's crevice. If possible, he uses his dagger to finish him off at a joint. The samurai still has options if he doesn't let himself be embraced, cutting off hands when the knight changes his grip, pushing to create space and recovering his lance. His way to win is to maintain distance and land several clean strikes in vulnerable areas. The knight's way is to achieve a good closing position, hooking, unbalancing with his leg, taking him to the ground, and working from above, protected by his armor. If this happens in a corridor or on a bridge, there's little room to rotate the lance, and the knight benefits from this. If the terrain is broken and obstacle-strewn, it's easier for the samurai to regain distance. Here, in a clear, unobstructed view, everything boils down to one idea. If the spear is dominant, the samurai is dominant. If melee combat is dominant, the knight is dominant. With that in mind, let's return to the bigger picture. What wins isn't a single weapon, it's the combination that best suits its environment. European plate armor is a marvel against cuts and arrows. The Japanese, more segmented, prioritizes mobility and reduced fatigue. In open battle, spears rule. Yari and pikes are decisive. The sword is secondary when the line holds. Japan excels at coordinating fire and maneuver, especially on broken terrain. Europe stands out in deep formations that, if not disrupted, are very difficult to break. Logistics are a key factor. Artillery and continuous steel require wagons, forage, and money. Japanese armies compensate with local networks and greater agility. The question isn't which weapon wins, but which military system responds best to its environment. Europe perfects the heavy charge and then disciplined infantry with pike and gunpowder. Japan integrates mobility, marksmanship, and coordinated fire across complex terrain. When we strip away the myths, both worlds offer us the same lesson. Effectiveness stems from adaptation. If you enjoy debunking myths with facts and context, subscribe and tell me below, what historical comparison would you like to see?